Hi guys, I'm Tiare Rattimora. This is my personal YouTube channel, and today I wanna chill and discuss the case of Kendra, the viral TikTok woman who fell in love with her psychiatrist and he kept her anyway. Or so her series says, in which she also implies that he loved her back. I don't think so, but I want to discuss that case within the current context. I'm not here to mock this woman. I'm here to say my opinion about where I think it fits within the current political moment, and the range of trends that I usually discuss on this channel. You will recall how Selena Gomez, who, by the way, I made a short video about, also placing her and Jelena politically on the Mera 25 channel. I will link down below. She sings "How Does It Feel to Be Forgotten?" presumably to a man who has been married for years. Years before she even met her current fiance. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day. We just found it pretty ironic, but also rather unsurprising given what we feel surrounded by in terms of this trend of, just to put it very simply, refusing to accept rejection as women. And obviously men have a arguably much harder time with that, given, the numbers don't lie. Women are being murdered for rejecting men. As we say in Spain, feminicidio, here the terms are very clear as to what that is and how it fits into a patriarchal scenario, but that is not to say that women don't have a very hard time also handling rejection. And so what happened to Kendra, who in my opinion was, or at least felt, rejected? So she took to TikTok to denounce her psychiatrist for keeping her even though he knew she was in love with him. And she sort of presented the facts as if he was into her too, like I was saying. The thing is that everything about her retelling of the story tells us he neither did he do something nefarious, nor did he like her back. That's just, I don't think she's lying in her TikTok series. I just think she's wrongly assessing his role in the situation and where her impressions are coming from about it. And I there's been so many videos about this on YouTube, pretty much everywhere. I will link down below a couple that I found the most insightful. The psychology with Dr. Anna one I thought was interesting in terms of the perspective of a mental health professional, and the Hasanabi one is just if you want to watch the whole thing from Kendra without having to go to the hell that seems TikTok. Literally never been on it, don't plan on doing it ever. But yeah, basically this story, I think, just reflects this refusal to see the role as women as someone who's simply being rejected, and to just put above any sort of simple rejection being abused, or having been traumatized by this situation, or having been misled, led on even. And I think this case has many echoes of what has happened in Spain with actress Elisa Mulia and her interaction with former left-wing politician Iñigo Errejón, whom she was I mean, pretty much admittedly, like if you just look at her literal videos, she was excited about him, probably like felt romantically about him in terms of what she's giving and what she's saying. And he basically was quite rude in terms of like not being careful, like not being caring at all with her when they actually met up and hooked up basically. And you know, she ended up filing a police report, and turns out audios come out of her literally saying she didn't deem what he did to be criminal, and she probably doesn't now, but she did it as a sort of like feminist, as part of like her feminist struggle to defend other women who were like denouncing him anonymously on Instagram. And it just became very obvious that like the dynamic there was she basically was really into this guy romantically, she wanted more, and because he didn't reciprocate, that was unrequited, she turned it into, well, he assaulted me, you know? I've talked more about this specific case in my interview with Raquel Gando on the Meta 25 channel, which I will also link. I also discussed the case in a lot of detail because I also had an interaction with this same politician. I was one of the women he texted, and spoiler alert, I didn't particularly care, and everything stopped when I stopped it, so it was kind of just a gossip for me for a long time, and then this, you know, blew up. But I told it in quite a bit of detail on Left Reckoning. If you are a Left Reckoning subscriber, you will be able to watch that. And if you speak Spanish, you can go to the Meta 25 channel, and then you can see my retelling of the story as well, and sort of where does that fit within the current political landscape. And yeah, I will link all of that down below. And also on Left Reckoning, a year and a half ago, I discussed what I want to discuss now, right? So where does this fit? Like, where does it fit with all the ideas that I usually discuss? Because I don't think any of this is happening in a vacuum. I think actually this is a reflection of a much larger political context. And you know, you can also spot this kind of trend in cultural products, such as the film Promising Young Woman or the film The Girl on the Train, where you can see two trends that I think are very dominant within feminist discourse. One of them being the denial of our feelings at all costs via their rationalization. So to give you an example, you might have seen this post on social media which goes like, how do I get over my crush? And someone responding to that, asking about social issues. The implication being, if he's wrong about social issues, you're good. Like, it's just gonna make you fall out of love, you know, because you are rational in your feelings, which is literally, like, in that same sentence, you should see how that makes no sense. If, you know, this is the sentimental part of your life, not the civil, societal, political, intellectual part of your life. So isn't that ironic? And so, yeah, basically, like, the implication is your rationalization of who this person is will take you out of inconvenient feelings you have for them. The other big trend is revenge over sexual misconduct due to the impossibility to overcome it as women. Fundamentally, we are allowed or even encouraged to be an agentic subject, if that is to take that revenge. But not really when it comes to overcome the injury. Like any sort of sexually related injury in women is sort of embedded in this very predominant PMC, professional managerial class centered trauma culture, and is not really regarded as something you can get over. A lot of this current feminist struggle is centered on that realm, and it's even sort of frowned upon if it doesn't like ruin your life. You're very much encouraged to like share it on social media, write about your trauma, basically make kind of a career even out of it if where possible. And so what does it do? What does this do? Basically, what this culture does not allow for is bad taste, if you will. The admission that in love we might desire something that we may simultaneously not want or not choose, or that simultaneously we are aware is bad in general or simply bad for us. We basically refuse to admit that what is torturing us ultimately, like the most, isn't the sexual or misogynistic misconduct, but ultimately the unrequited love or life plans, right? And so if you try to think about the people around you and like their approach, especially the women around you and their approach to rejection, are you seeing any of this? Like, can you not really think of anyone who's been through it? Because for me, it's really been such a big trend, like I said, in my personal life, in culture, in politics. It's pretty much the zeitgeist, in my opinion. It's honestly everywhere I look, it's there. And I think this was the case with Kendra. She made a story of her being fundamentally feeling like rejected by her like psychiatrist into a story about her being mistreated by him or being led on or being manipulated, right? And I don't know, for me, this has also, in my experience and to much detriment of myself, to great damage of a certain area of my life that kind of ruined my life in a way. This has been used as a deterrent by someone who basically wanted to get me out of the way. She fundamentally, what she did there was use all of these elements, try to make me rationalize my feelings, my desires, try to play the girl code card, try to paint the situation as one where she had been, basically manipulated, abused, improperly treated in a professional context, and what all of that amounted to was fundamentally, be careful, stay safe, don't get into this, it's not good for you, when actually it wasn't good for her. And if I was willing to risk it, I really should have. And the point I want to make here is she was hurt ultimately because of the unrequited feelings, life plans, love fundamentally, way more than by the situation being honestly a little dodgy and not great. And she basically just talked way more about the situation being kind of, not really proper, not really considerate or respectful, and never lost a chance to basically make this guy out to be just, the devil. And the only reason why she kept bringing it up, though, wasn't really like her trauma connected to that, but it was because extremely obviously she wasn't over him sentimentally. And the point also that I really want to highlight is both things can be true at the same time. I think you can simultaneously be sort of like grossed out by someone's behavior, by a situation, by their treatment of you, of other people. And that doesn't stop you from still having feelings for them. It can, maybe help you, kind of put you in a direction where you are maybe drawing out of those feelings, but in no way does that mean you are like instantly going to, be out of your feelings for them. That's just, I don't know, it's like this recognition that there can be these contradictory feelings or sensations for a person is just like, why are we denying? I mean, yeah, I know why. Like, we are denying that there can be contradictory feelings because we want an easy way out. And it's very uncomfortable and very painful to be rejected, which is what happens all the time, actually. And that seems like such an easy way out. And the thing is, when our private, personal, and psychic lives are turned into the only politics that are presented as worthy to us, or even that you can make a career out of, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Of course you're gonna go for it. Or we can use it to manipulate a situation to like take someone out that's in a position that's sort of annoying to you because you feel like they're taking away the object of your desire, or they're distracting him, or you fear you might lose it to them. And it's just really sad. It's very bad politics, and yeah, it does reflect a lot of wider trends that I'm gonna get into. And I admit myself having been very conflicted, and feeling simultaneous sort of being grossed out, but also not being over something. It's perfectly possible, and we are not doing any woman any favors by denying the reality that it can very much happen. And actually, I think it's more common than not, to be honest. So basically, we have drawn away from the rational agentic subject in our political lives and from our civil political lives altogether. Only to make our personal lives into our politics, like I was saying, and to demand our rationality takes center stage in them. In our psychic life, our inner psychic life, including in sex and love. And especially in the professional experts, we are told we desperately need to tell us what to do and how to do it. But in my opinion, sex and love aren't about that, and I'm gonna read from people who also share that thought. So I found a great article, as usual, in Damage Magazine. It's called Inside the Mind of the Professional Managerial Class, Part 4, Notes on the Sex Recession. It's by Lizzie Warren, and she writes, in Jacqueline Rose's words, sexuality, in its capacity to unsettle the subject, is a break against the intolerable limits of common sense. She continues, spontaneous organic bodily aliveness is preemptively displaced by a prescriptive performative pseudo-vitality of self-surveillance and self-control. When my patients are having regular sex, she continues, it is often viewed as one more chore on the checklist, one further obligation to be anxiously policed and performed. Couples ask tensely, what is normal? What's healthy? Is twice a week all right? They've turned sex into homework. I'm gonna continue with Clara Serra's sexual neoliberalism in El País. It's called in Spanish el neoliberalismo sexual o la insoportable oscuridad del sexo. I wonder how many of you guys read Spanish, but if you can, she's a brilliant thinker in this field. So she says, we not only don't really know another's desire, but neither do we know our own. Sometimes we did not know what we wanted until we did it. Our desires are not there before the encounter with another, but they spring from our interactions. Trying to eradicate the not knowing from sex is a failed attempt to take opacity out of the equation and therefore also desire. And I want to link this to the video I did on dog moms, and basically the zeitgeist being centered around the negation of the encounter with another, any very being basically placed and focused on individual choice and the sort of constant perennial quote unquote freedom of basically just escaping, being fundamentally cut adrift, and not refusing to be entangled with others, and just being attached only to not being attached to this basically individual choice, and against anything that can stop you from taking it at any time, from city shopping, from country shopping, from constantly changing jobs, homes, to your liking, basically. And I'm gonna link the video below so you can see kind of a little bit more of the argument and where it fits, and where it fits also with having children, or more precisely, not having them, which is what is happening at the moment. I also want to read from Maren Thom in Compact magazine. Neither side wants to emancipate women. Freedom glimpsed after 1989 proved frightening. The collapse of the old order left no moral architecture, only the brutal efficiencies of global capitalism. The dream of emancipation collided with the realities of the industrialization, inequality, and exhaustion. Into that void marched identity. In this new dispensation, the political subject became not a bearer of freedom, but a bearer of injury. Feminism retreated from the goal of transcending womanhood, seeking instead the recognition of that role. Feminists came to believe that true emancipation could not be achieved, and so abandoned the project. Emancipation requires solidarity and a shared moral horizon. Postmodernism offered none of this. It offered instead infinite deconstruction and the comforted cynicism of those who had given up. Which goes to the point of how sexual crimes or sexual hardship are now seen as injuries impossible to overcome for women, right? And how, fundamentally there's no hope for material, political, social emancipation. It's all about your inner psychic life, which is like entirely connected to the point that I just made before, which is this like, constant like perennial individual choice, this quote unquote freedom, in which you are your own anchor, because there is nothing else. So of course you're gonna have to be attached to yourself and fundamentally self-obsessed about your psychology. I also want to read from Daydreaming at the Sex Conference by Christian Prince in Damage magazine. And it reads, "It may be true that for psychoanalysis to be political, it needs to have a libido. But by the same token, for psychoanalysis to have a libido, with all its perversion, it needs to include inconvenient, impure politics." For Division 39's laudable readiness, this is the conference, to discuss race and queerness, more classic analytic problems stand more unresolved now than ever, like incest, fetish, seduction, neurosis, and sexual performance, were strangely neglected, like political non-starters. Because this is where our politics are, in our sexual and private and psychic lives, then of course we have to make everything we do in those realms political. And then in a situation where sort of politically incorrect things are regarded as just no-goes, non-starters, then of course you're gonna avoid anything that might seem a little too dangerous. And I think this all perfectly fits with the current left's search for the most passive, victim-fitting, like good as a victim object in society, in our interactions with others and with the world. And I'm gonna read from Clara Serra again in El País. This article is Thinking Sex. And it reads, "Punitive discourses, that is, seeing criminal actions everywhere and constantly demanding judicial and penal intervention, necessarily results in feeding into patriarchal ideas about the vulnerability, feebleness, sexual passivity, and extreme infantilization of women. They become absolute victims with no agency in the sexual negotiation." Exactly, and this is exactly what we've seen, what I was saying in the beginning. Women like Kendra or Elisa Mulia are putting forth, like before they do anything else, they're putting forth that demand that these men be judged as fundamentally perpetrators, in a way in which they've not only rejected them or misbehaved, but they have abused them in ways that are like either straight up criminal or quasi-criminal. And that's just no way to go. And I think it's entirely connected to the lack of any sort, really, of grand narrative, of epic historical narrative that we would see in the form of working class struggle, for example. But that also becomes lacking from human existence as a whole, because there is an enormous lack of humanism. It's all about whatever will be, or you gotta have good luck, or kind of BS like that, instead of, we can, if we organize, we can take our future into our own hands, because we are the most powerful thing on the earth and we are the center of it. Actually, no, we've become a virus on it. And I think, if that's the premise, then of course, if you get rejected, it's just gonna feel like something that stops you from being happy, which is painted as the thing you should aspire to be, when I don't think that should be the meaning of life. But yeah, when that's all you have left, I understand people's desperation and living in denial, when actually I think having acceptance that you might, hopefully not, but you might turn out to sort of be a tragic character, or at least you might be one for certain periods or in certain arenas of your life. Like, I think that it would be healthy to like accept that like that's it, and like that will, in an encouraging or like consoling way, put you together with so many others that have lived before, and that have created immortal art, that have, been part of a human history struggle, regardless of how certain areas of their lives went for them. And I don't know, even looking at the greatest literature, and the greatest literary authors, like if you look at The Little Mermaid, my favorite, its author, even Dante, like these people were not happy in love. It went pretty bad for them, and yet here they are still, and they're part of something, and I don't know, and even their characters are still beautiful and worth learning about. And I don't know, I think we need to be more accepting of things going wrong, and also not be hard on ourselves when, we don't like what's expected that we like. Like I've been in situations where like I remember in uni they told me like in a sort of insulting way, like, "Oh, you're such a classic," and I didn't understand what they meant. It was a mix of like, "You're so basic," and like you go exactly for what we would think you'd go. But it's just like, even this idea that I see a lot of men like wishing like for it to be true, but they basically so want for like the like classic like fuckboy to not be a thing anymore, to say, oh, only like 20-year-olds are into that kind of guy. Like if you are, then it means you're immature, it means you're like superficial and like led by like basic instincts, and it's just like, guys, if someone's good with women, there's probably a reason. Like, we're not idiots, to be honest, and also we don't need to be intellectuals in love. Like, this is the point, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like someone to make a political statement, and it's just profoundly insulting when we are asked for that to be the case, and it just implies, these are some people's politics, and so they need to make them count. They need to make them count. And it's just devastating because this is not the realm for politics. Obviously, it's imbued in politics, it's permeated by politics because our material conditions pretty much operate everywhere in our lives, but it's not where political action should lie, and it shouldn't be the only battleground. We should have our civil political lives as a working class, and then we should have the material, and that should give us the material conditions to be able to freely enjoy sex and love as we desire at any given moment. And in that vein, I want to finish by reading from an article that I also discussed on Left Reckoning, like I said before. I was on that episode in which, I discussed how these topics about like sex and love on the left and like the current zeitgeist. And this article is by Amber Ailey Frost in The Baffler. It's called Daddy Issues, and I'm gonna read you a couple of quotes from it that I found brilliant and that go to this point that I was getting at. The idea that it's men, not money, who are most responsible for preventing parents from devoting more time and labor to their homes and children is astoundingly condescending and divorced from reality. But if your biggest problems in life have always been romantic or familial and not financial, it can be easy to mistake your resentful fantasies for a political program. Exactly, and I think this is also what these women do, like the examples that I made. They so devote their like quote unquote struggles towards like a given man, thinking that men are the problem, or that men who don't go to therapy are the problem, or that individual misogynistic men are the problem, and so the solution, what is probably another therapy session, or prison, punitive measures. They completely misplace the problem. We're not gonna solve things by going after these men. In fact, the solutions, as I was getting at, should come from elsewhere. Amber continues. So much time and resources were wasted in trying to track down my father in order to extract the absolute pittance of child support he was obliged to pay. My mother would have to miss work for the support court hearings that she was obliged to attend. Sometimes he just wouldn't show. In place of that futile ordeal, she would have absolutely loved free 24-hour daycare or even a child allowance. The child support system worked mainly to tie her to a selfish and mentally ill man for the full duration of my childhood. Half the time, he was too out of sorts even to hold down a job. Maybe if he had access to mental health care, he would have been a better father. But some men are just hopeless, and my mother would have preferred to be free of her dependence on him, to relax, to live in a less decrepit apartment, to spend time with me, to socialize, to fucking sleep. If you want to socially engineer a loving and responsible masculinity, she continues, men themselves must become thoroughly optional, meaning their participation in romantic partnership and or parenting would not be necessary to the financial security of either a woman or a family. I don't believe that men are so thoroughly heartless they need a financial obligation to remind them to love their children. I think they need the same things women need to be good parents: time and money. That is it for today. Please subscribe to support me and like this video if you did. And I will see you here soon.